Hey everyone, Boardgame Brody here with Meeple Mountain. I have a copy of Tidal Blades, Heroes of the Reef, a strategic worker placement game of rolling dice, defeating monsters, and it's by Druid City Games and Skybound Games. Tidal Blades was published back in 2020, so you might have heard about it, but I'm here to tell you 8 things that you need to know about this game. Number 1, the theme. Players play as Tidal Blades in training. Tidal Blades are defenders of the people defending the reef from monsters coming through the fold. And the fold was built back 15 years ago to keep the onslaught of creatures coming in from beyond the reef. But something has happened where the monsters are ripping through the fold and finding their way in. To protect the reef, a tournament has been called to prepare those who will soon become Tidal Blades after fulfilling some rigorous training. Number 2. The mechanics. Players will be training by visiting different spots on the different boards. This is the worker placement mechanic. Each location will have a specific action listed on it, like gaining resources or more dice. Each board has 2 to 3 spaces for an action, but then the board itself has its own type of special action that can be used as well. So players will try to visit certain boards to gain its action, but then go to a specific spot on that board to perform its listed action. When moving a character already placed on the board, one of the action discs of that character will stay, and they will then be able to visit another open spot on any of the board, with their leftover action disc blocking the space that they just came from. Players will be able to take 2 to 4 worker placement actions in each round. One of the main things that you're trying to do with these worker placement spots is to gain dice or upgrade your dice to better ones. Players will be rolling dice hoping for specific results on the dice to use to fulfill challenge cards. Each player will have a certain number of these cards in their hand and will also gain more as the game progresses. These cards represent challenges, and the player will need to be on the matching arena shown on the bottom of the card to initiate that challenge. After completing the challenge successfully, you will gain the stated number of points listed on that card, and you will also gain some trait advancements that you use during that challenge. Each player has a character board with 4 traits and can be adjusted by turning the dials. The higher these traits become, the better your character becomes, but also the more points at the end of the game that you'll earn. So accomplishing challenges increases your character traits, helping you to become a better Tidal Blade to fight off the monsters and gain points. A big part of the game is when you think you're ready, or at times just to hold back the monsters, you will need to attack them at the fold. This can be good and bad because you'll be able to attack the monsters to gain points, but every time that you use a die against the monster, you will permanently lose it. This is different from the challenges because in the challenges you will always get your dice back. In the game you'll be advancing up on the champion board, which will give you in-game points, but there are several other ways to gain points during the game, like your traits or fulfilling challenges. Number 3. Asymmetrical abilities. Each player has a different character that they're going to be playing as, and each have their own permanent abilities and effects. As you advance on your synergy dial, you'll be able to reveal more character cards giving you additional abilities. Each player also has their own goal cards that they are trying to fulfill. Number 4. The Shell Shield. Each time that you roll the dice in a challenge, you will also roll the damage die associated with that round. As you progress in the game, this damage die will get worse and worse for you. When you do get a result that shows an X when it's rolled, that player will either place one of their shells onto their shell shield to block that damage. Sometimes the damage die might have 2 X's that you might need to add 2 shields to block the damage. But if you don't have a shell to block the damage, then you will lose a die, which is not good for you. But shells are important to block these damages. Whenever you have 4 shells on your shield that you've used to block damage already, you can spin those shells, removing them from the shield to set a die to any face. This will help you accomplish a challenge or gain a hit on a monster. In addition, you can also spin 6 shells on the shield to refresh 2 dice from the spent pool to the active pool. Number 5. A player's turn. Players will take turns placing their character with action discs below it on any of the open worker placement spots on any of the boards. The player will take the reward from the chosen spot, and then they will take the reward from the board. Then, if the player would like, they can play a challenge card from their hand and roll the dice to try to fulfill that challenge. All worker placement spots pretty much show everything that you would be getting. This board here will reward you with a stunt card. This one here will let you move the boat one place and take the shown benefit. And this one will let you either buy a card from the market or you can gain one fruit. When performing a challenge, you will check your focus level. This level allows you to use that many dice from your active pool to allocate for this challenge. In addition, you can spend one fruit to add an additional die, and you can do this as many times as you would like as you have fruit. Dice are then rolled and allocated to the challenge if it has a match. The remaining dice can be re-rolled any number of times, but the damage die is also re-rolled every single time that you roll the dice. This might make you use more shells to block the damage, or you might end up losing a die. When you have satisfied that card, matching your dice with the trait symbol shown on the card, that challenge is completed, and you'll move the trait dial on your player board up by 1 for each die or symbol that you used for that challenge. If you accomplish the challenge, you will also slide the card under your player board to be used toward a fighting style bonus when you're fighting monsters. Also, when you complete a set of challenges, one of each type of challenge, you will move up 2 on the champion board, and when impressing the judge by performing a challenge in the same location, you will move up once on the champion board. This will be done over and over again so that your character progresses to be able to fight the monsters when visiting the fold. Each monster is different and they will award differently, but you will always be able to move up further up on the champion board, gaining points when you defeat monsters. Monsters will always move from the top to the bottom, and between rounds, a die is rolled to see if they will invade. If a player doesn't attack a certain monster that round, and the die result shows that it invades, then that player ends up losing a die or doing whatever it says for that monster. Also, if the monster is never defeated and it moves off of the board, then it will also cause you to move down 1 on the champion board if you didn't contribute a hit toward it while it was coming through the fold. Number 6, the end of the game. The game will go through a number of rounds, probably 4 or 5, with each player taking the same amount of turns. In some rounds, players will be awarded additional action discs to do more, and at the end of the last round, the game ends. Number 7, points. You will count up points at the end of the game from the challenges that you have completed, for the points from your trait dials that you have reached, points from the champion board with the players in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd scoring additional points. Players will gain a point for each hit token placed on the champion board from earlier rounds. Players will score their secret goals. And lastly, players will get 1 point for each damage that they have done to the current monsters in the fold. Whoever has the most points wins the game and becomes the new champion and leader of the new Tidal Blade class. Number 8. Some thoughts on the game. Overall, the game isn't too complex where you don't have a plan to know what you're doing, but it's still complex enough that not every decision that you're going to make in the game is perfect. Now, the game does take a while to play. It does take up a lot of room on the table as well. The game is different every time you play because you have different characters to play with and lots of character cards within that same character that will affect your choices every time. Because of the high number of cards in the game, be it stunt cards, challenges, monsters, the game will play out a little bit differently every time you're playing, but the basis will always be relatively the same. The game combines a nice combination of mechanics, including rolling dice, but with some careful planning, players can mitigate the risks of rolling dice, or they might develop a nice backup plan. The mechanics that shine in the game is the worker placement, the dice rolling, and the character building. The game has amazing components. Every player ends up having different abilities, so players are able to do special things, and ultimately whoever is the most efficient player will win the game. And overall, the game is pretty great, but the game sometimes makes you feel like you haven't actually done all that much, even after playing the game for about 2 hours. But due to the multiple actions during one turn, players extend the time of playing the game, but will still only take the same amount of actions each turn. Also, additional modules and add-ons to the game can be made to give you what you would like to experience, and although some of these changes the game, they all blend well with the basics of the game. So train your hardest to protect the Reef with your family and friends in Tidal Blades, Heroes of the Reef by Droid City Games and Skybound Games. Again, this is Board Game Brody. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stick around and check out some other board game reviews to see what you might want to get to the table.